I was kind of a surprise to me when you recorded that other little test thing we did the other day, and some of the stories I wanted to tell were told then. So, what can I do? What does everybody want to know?
Well, as soon as I get Chris on the line here, I got a couple of questions I have here. Let me pull them up. And your father was involved in both modeling aviation, full-size flying, and I'm sure he influenced you in your early days. Tell us about your father.
Yeah, my dad was born in Arkansas. In 1913, he was born in Arkansas, and he moved with his mother to Louisville, Kentucky in the 20s. His father, my grandfather, had passed away, and he supported my grandmother by building rubber power ROGs and selling them via mail order worldwide. And he did that all through the Depression, too, and supported the family. But the really neat thing was that he was an airport brat, and he'd hang around the Louisville airport, especially around Derby days, and he'd polish the Spartan executives that came in and work on airplanes for people and clean them up. And he got to meet, while he was at that airport, he got to meet all the famous pilots of the era. He got to meet Charles Lindbergh, and he actually helped Amelia Earhart down off the wing of a burning Vega. So he's been around aviation his whole life.
Well, I bet that was a real thrill for him. I mean, that's quite a bit in aviation history. We got Chris coming on.
We got a call.
Call coming in.
Hello.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Welcome to Stunt Hangar.
Hey, Bob.
Bob Hunt.
How you doing, guys?
Good.
Good.
Well,
We were just reminiscing about my dad's involvement in aviation and how he got started. You know, it's funny because when my dad he got into model aviation, and he all his friends and all the people hung around our house, and all the people that worked for my father were all model airplane flyers. So I was about 8 years old before I realized that not everybody in the whole world flew model airplanes. You know.
How did you get involved in Stunt, Bob?
Well, Stunt came later on. I mean, obviously it was just a process of osmosis, being around it all the time. I learned how to fly, but I never thought I'd ever become a stunt flyer or a competition flyer. That just seemed like too lofty a goal. And I started practicing in the early 60s with an airplane called a J. Robert Swift. And I got all the maneuvers down, and I was flying at a local field one day, and this guy came over, one of these top senior pilot from the area, Carl Wahlberg, and he came over and said, "Hey, why aren't you doing the pattern?" And I said, "Well, I don't know the pattern." And he says, "Yeah, you do. I've been watching you. You know all the maneuvers. All you got to do is connect them." So I said, "Well, I don't think this airplane will do the whole pattern." So he said, "Well, can I fly it?" And I said, "Sure." So he flew a beautiful pattern with it, and then he said, "Hey, this airplane flies great." And the very next flight I flew my first pattern, and then I started flying, you know, day in and day out, all day, weekends, nights, everything I could, you know. So, and finally got, to a point where I was flying well enough that Bill Simons found me in a Dust Bowl field one day flying, and offered to help, and the rest is kind of history.
Well, I know that there's, kind of an evolution from Stunt when you're flying somebody else's airplane, and you're known for all your original designs. When did you start designing your own models?
Yeah, well, I started actually drawing airplanes. My dad had a drafting board, and I started drawing airplanes very early on, but not building them. And he would come up and he'd critique them. He'd ask me why I was doing something a certain way, and if I didn't have a good answer, he'd say, "Well, think about it a little bit more." So I was doing a lot of original drawing, but I guess my first original airplane was the Caprice, which was really designed around the numbers of Gene Schaefer's Blackbird, which is what we named it because he never named his airplanes in those days. But he had this black airplane that was super sleek, and I asked him if I could build one, and he said, "Sure." And then I asked him if I could change the shapes and everything. He said, "Yeah, he didn't mind that." But he gave me the secret moments, 9 3/8, 14 3/4 back in those days, and I built my first original design airplane, and then I built a number of them after that, the F-105 Thunder Chief and the Avanti, which predated Bob Barron's Avanti by several years, and a number of other airplanes as well.
How did you arrive at the airfoils?
Well, I was just using what was kind of being used in the East Coast in that time frame. Right around that time, the Mike Stott and his father Arnie had started a company called Foam Flight, and Gene Schaefer had flown one of the first Arnold Stott wings in a contest in '65, and I had seen the article by Ray Olson and Ed Izzo in the I think it was December '64 issue of Model Airplane News on foam cutting, and that intrigued me. So when we were able to buy foam wings, I bought a couple of them and built airplanes around those. And the predominant airfoil in those days was a slightly thicker than normal Nobler, which we eventually started calling the Super Wing on the East Coast. And most of our airplanes were built around a Nobler, which was about nominally 3/32 of an inch to an 1/8 inch thicker, and a tiny bit more cord to it. But basically a Nobler type airfoil.
Is there anything you'd like to know, Chris?
Well, it sounds like you like to design planes, and I know you help me with mine, but you always have interesting names. So I was curious how you come up with the names for your planes.
Well, the Caprice was in those days. There was an airplane called the Impala by Eddie Elastic, named after a Chevy car, and I liked that. And I was looking for a car name for that airplane, and the Caprice had just came out on the market, so I named that Caprice. Later on, I guess my most famous airplane was the Genesis, and most people thought, because I have a love of music, that was named after the group Genesis, which was fairly famous, I guess, at that time. But it really wasn't. It was named after the first book of the Bible, because I have a deep and abiding faith in Christ, and it was a way to get people to ask me about the name, and ask me if it was the rock group, and I say no, it's the first book of the Bible, and then I can tell them about my faith.
Oh, I see. What about Crossfire? I was curious about that one.
Well, Crossfire was actually just the actual original Crossfire was a radio control airplane. In the early '80s, I quit flying Stunt because I had gotten the job at Flying Models magazine as the editor, and I had to know something about radio control. I had a young family I had to support. So I started flying radio control pattern and designed an airplane called the Crossfire, and took a lot of control line thinking into that airplane, from control line into that airplane. And then when I came back to control line flying in the late '80s, I took a lot of radio control thinking back to control line. So that airplane was named for the crossfire of technology between radio control and control line.
Well, that sort of goes along with the tuned pipe era that you brought along. You and a couple others. What's the real story behind the development on that?
Well, in those days, it all started in radio control. In about 1985, they were switching over from the normal ballistic type pattern, where you do a maneuver, one maneuver per pass, and then you go out half a mile and turn around at 900 miles an hour and come back and do another maneuver, which is what I was flying. And they changed it to to get a smaller noise footprint to a box type pattern, or a rescue type pattern, where you had to fly inside a box. And in order to get more torque, Richie Tower and Dean Pappas were working together on engine development, and they found out that if Richie hit the books, and he went into the two-stroke engine tuner's handbook and learned all about that, and he designed a second reflected wave tuned pipe and put it in one of Dean's pattern ships. And I was out practicing pattern one day, and Dean was out there flying the first of these second reflected wave tuned pipes. And he came across the field, and he pushed it without throttling, without adjusting the throttle. He pushed the nose down to do what's called a reverse top hat, and he came down and the engine governed. And then when he pulled out level, it boosted back up again to normal speed, and then when he pulled the nose up, it boosted to climb the other leg of the top hat, and then when he leveled off, it went back to its normal RPM. And all of this happened without him touching the throttle at all. So he called me over right away, and he said, "Hey, Bob, where did you ever want an engine run like this?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." And he said, "How about control line Stunt?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." He says, "Well, you suck at pattern, but, you're pretty good at Stunt, so you just came out of retirement." And then that's pretty much how we developed it for control line use.
Well,
that's great.
And actually, the credit, I was just kind of the handle monkey. The credit for that goes to Dean and mostly to Richie Tower for the mathematics involved. My dad designed the first mandrel on which we could pull a carbon fiber sock and make a tune pipe, a carbon fiber tune pipe, to make it light enough that it wouldn't have a vertical CG issue and also not have an overweight airplane. And then when we got it working really well, we called Billy Werwage because we knew he, being a musician, he had all day to test fly. And he came in and took one flight. We set him up one of his airplanes with a pipe, and he took one flight, and on the glide down past us, big smile on his face, he said, "Well, there goes 40 years of engine development down the tubes," you know. And and then he took the pipe stuff home and he started making them, and he and Randy Smith developed even greater pipes after that and better running pipes. So that's pretty much how the evolution of all that went.
Well, along about that time, I don't know what came first. Was it the lost foam wing, or was that afterwards?
Well, the lost foam wing came way down the line. I started cutting foam wings for myself around 1968. The wings that we were getting from Arnie and Mike Stott were solid core wings at first, and then they started making double chord wings. And I figured, well, my dad said, well, we could do this, and we could even make them triple chord and take a little bit more weight out. So that's what we did, and we built foam wings for ourselves. And then Gene Schaefer and Bill Simon started using them. And then very shortly after that, I formed a company called Control Line Specialties, and we started producing foam wings. And that later turned into Control Specialties, so we weren't just constricted to control line activities. We could do radio control stuff too. And I cut kit wings for radio control airplanes and most of the control line stunt wings in the world, I guess, at that time. But it wasn't until the early 90s I was thinking about a way of making a built-up wing that had all the accuracy attributes of foam, but would be a little bit lighter. And then when they had dawned on me that the negative, or the shuck, or the cradle that's left after you cut a wing, is just as accurate a negative representation of the wing shape as a core is a positive representation. So it dawned on me that we could cut a wing up, a foam core, into rib stations, and use those rib stations to make templates to make ribs, and then in turn build the wing in the lower cradle half from which the wing was cut and have a perfect form-fitting cradle. And
that's really good.
we did that. I actually thought of that about 9 o'clock one night, built the first wing, stayed up all night long building the wing for my Tucker Special, and it weighed 3.5 ounces, and I took it into Carson's Publications the next day to Flying Models to show it to Frank Finelli, my associate, and the boss, Hal Carsons, came in, and he picked it up and put his fingers right through it.
Oh.
And he went, "Oh." So his way of apologizing was to call me Bob for the next 2 weeks instead of Hunt.
I had, when I was building my airplane with Emma, in that little sack, she grabbed onto 3 ribs and just went ding, 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 ding. Yeah. I've had that happen too. My son Brian came into the room one day. I was working on an RC pattern wing, built-up wing, and he knocked over a chair, and the chair hit the outboard wing, and it just went right down the wing and broke every rib in the wing.
Well, Bob, you know I have every video that you produced, and I'm just wondering.
You're the guy. I knew I sold them to somebody.
Yeah. Now, I know that I learned how to mold balsa wood from you, but I know it's been around since the 20s because they've been doing it forever. So when did you and Billy, with the Thunderbolts, when did you guys figure out molding balsa was the way to go?
Well, we really didn't. I guess I have to give credit. Like you said, it's been being done in free flight models all the way back into the late 20s, early 30s. But I guess the person who gets the most credit for the molding is Al Raby, because he's the one that actually brought it to prominence in control line world, and did whole fuselages and things where we were doing just top blocks and bottom blocks and leading edges. But it's just a logical thing, because really good balsa wood is getting hard to come by, and to carve a block and leave 99% of it on the floor, and then have to carve another one the next time you build an airplane just didn't seem very logical. So doing the molded shells was just a logical extension of doing the molded leading edges we were doing for the lost foam wings. And Billy was the one that really turned me on to how to do compound curve molding, and we did a video on that.
Right. That's how I learned how to relieve the wood, because I could do straight form molding, but I never could figure out how in the heck you guys get it to go around the corner. And
yeah, cut that little slice, and then you overlay it, and you slice it again, and pull a little pie piece out, and a little dart, and then you wrap it together. Yeah, and the first time I saw that, it was like an epiphany to me when he did that the first time, and it was like Katie barred the door, because then anything was possible.
Well, you know that Ron O'Toole was, you know, him and I have been friends for 25 years or so, and he's been schooling me of the way Tucker did things, and we tried molding something, but never have seen molded fuselages. When, you know, I tried to mold two halves in a right and a left of the entire fuselage, and there was no way that was working whatsoever until I saw your video. I go, wow, what are, like you say, an epiphany.
Yeah, well, again, Billy gets, you know, the credit for mostly for that video, because he was showing me how to do compound curve molding at the time we did the video. I had been doing straight form, which is very simple, you know, molding for quite a while at that point, and still do. But the compound curve molding, you know, again, opened so many doors to making exotic shapes. And I've always liked making swoopy-looking shapes, and I was always having to carve them out of big blocks. And now I can make them out of we're making them out of 1/16 balsa now, and it's working out fine.
Right. Yeah, you know, 1/16 laminated 2 times, or the 3/32. It doesn't much matter. As long as you can get it.
Well, we're just using we're just using one layer of 16th, but we're using very hard 16th. I'm using like about 10-pound 16th or better, and having to soak it for when you make up the blanks. I have to soak them for about 3 or 4 days in order to get them pliable enough to do the molding. But when you do that, you get a very, very thin and light shell, which also is very strong. So we've had no problems with that starved horse look between the formers with the latest ones we've done. So it makes it a lot easier, a lot cheaper, and a lot more repeatable. You know.
You know, we talk about the starved horse look. I found that, like on my latest Continental, I used all 3/32 wood and sanded it.
Mm-hmm.
That is so much superior if you can get good wood than 16.
Yeah, well, I think if you just put a coat of epoxy on the inside after you mold them, or a coat of carbon in there, it's going to be plenty strong. You know, and again, a lot of the materials we're using for finishing now don't have a lot of shrink. We're not using any butyrate anymore. We're using nothing but low shrink nitrate dope and a catalyzed finishing resin, and then we're using catalyzed products all the way up, you know, auto paints and things. So we're not getting any shrinkage. So I think if you were using butyrate dope or any high shrink dope, you might have a problem with the thinner shells. But if you're doing it without the shrinking materials, you get away fine with hard 16th. And another thing we're doing is we're using a steam generator and built a steam box. So when we have extreme compound curves we want to do, we just steam the wood, and it's like pretzels. You can make pretzels out of it, you know.
Have you brought yourself to try water-based paint yet?
Not yet, but several of my friends are using it. Jimmy Damarel is using it, and so is Tom Hampshire, and the airplanes look great. So I might be prompted to try that.
You know, I know that you went to the electric, and you know, I'd like to kind of give credit where credit's due. Walt Brunel and Mike Palco, they deserve the credit for bringing, you know, successful electric power into Stunt. But you were the first to compete at the high level with it. What, you know, what's that like? What made you decide that electric was the way to go?
Well, one of the names usually for the real, because he stayed with it from the NICAD days. I remember watching him fly a NICAD equipped twister, and just barely was able to get through a pattern several years ago. And then, of course, he stayed with it all the way until the LiPos came on board. So he really gets the lion's share of the credit in my book for bringing electric to the fore. But Walt Brunel also did a lot. And it was one year at the Nationals, it was 2005, I wasn't flying, I was judging, and my circle had finished up, and I was walking down towards Circle 1 on the L-pad, and it was a windy day, and I was watching this airplane go through the pattern. It was one of the advanced guys, And I'm thinking to myself, man, this airplane is quiet. And you know, it's got a good muffler on it. And man, look at it go through the wind. And I got closer and I realized it was an electric airplane. And when he landed, he was finished for the contest. And I walked over and did something that I seldom do. I asked him if I could fly his airplane. And he said, sure. So he put a battery in, and I got out to the handle, and he let it go. And this is an accurate statement. On the takeoff roll, before the airplane even broke ground, I knew that my life had completely changed. And I flew a flight and landed and thanked him. And as I was walking off the field, Paul Walker just ran out on the field and grabbed me. He said, what'd you think of it? What'd you think of it? I said, well, I think I'm going to call Dean Pappas on my way home and find out what I need to convert my airplane before the team trials. He laughed. He said, well, I wanted to be the first one to do it. I said, well, you know, you better do it quick, you know. So, but anyway, I did call Dean, and he computed everything, and we got one going. And about a month later, I made the team flying my first electric-powered airplane.
That's great. And that's where you see the future of things going is electric, right?
Well, I mean, it's one good thing. It's one good way of doing it. I mean, there's a number of ways of skinning this cat, and certainly glow is not dead. I mean, I've never been one to say that, you know, that electric is going to take over. I think that electric has its place for many pilots and can be advantageous because of all the attributes, all the advantages it gives you. The ability to fly in places you could never fly before, at times at which you could never fly. I have a field a quarter mile from my house surrounded by other houses, and I can go down there and fly at 6 o'clock in the morning, and no one even knows I'm there. So you can get more flying in, and the center of gravity never shifts, the pitch center of gravity never shifts, and I think that's a big plus, especially towards the end of the pattern in heavy wind when you have to do the overhead eights and the entry into the clover, where glow airplanes have burned off all their fuel, and they're tail heavy, and it's very difficult for them to maintain the track of a maneuver in the wind. But electric airplane, being still having the weight where, you know, the nose, it has a tendency to be able to do a better shape in those maneuvers. Also, you can adjust the roll center of gravity, the vertical center of gravity, and I think that's supremely important. You can't do that in glow because, A, if you change position of the tank, it's going to change the way the engine runs upright versus inverted, and also it's going to burn off anyway. But you can move the battery up and down and affect roll center of gravity, and that's really been something I think is a major, probably the major thing.
Right.
You know, not to mention your clothes don't smell, your car doesn't smell, you know, your shop doesn't smell, and, you know, occasionally you have to dust your airplanes off, and that's about it, you know, so.
Well, you can't never kick out glow, because if you'll notice, even the old, you know, tried and true Super Tiger is making its way to second place at the Worlds, you know. So,
yeah, no, well, no, like I said, I don't think electric is taking over. I think it has a lot of advantages for certain people.
Right. Well,
you know,
even I tried it. You know, I got some electric stuff, and they're all right. You know, like you say, it's a different cup of tea, and whatever works for you. You know.
Yeah, it's different strokes for different folks, and I have no problem. Like my son said, Robbie, after he flew electric the first time, he says, "Dad, I hope they outlaw it for everybody except you and me." Well, and I know what he means. I've sold all my glow engines. I don't have any glow engines anymore at all. And I've gone over to using electric twins, and the advantages in the twin is undeniable. I mean, you know, getting one glow engine to run consistently day in and day out is impossible, but you can do it with electric. Electric will run the same day in and day out, and week in and week out, and month in and month out. And you can use that means you can use two of them and get them to run that consistently. And then
I want to know what I mean, how many flights do you have on the twin now?
We have over 100 flights on it between Buddy Weeder and myself. We kind of co-built that, and we what we do is we take it to the field, and neither one of us wants to fly our single-engine airplanes anymore. We just bring that to the field. He brings all his batteries. I bring all mine. I put my handle on and fly 2 flights, and then we switch handles, and he flies 2 flights, and we do that all day. And that's enabled us to put a lot of flying time on it in a very short period of time.
What are some of the? I mean, you alluded to some advantages, but you didn't really say any. What are they?
Okay, well,
what do you guys
to me, Well, to me, the main advantage of it is the fact that now you have so much disc span. You have, two 10-inch props, and you're not getting a whole lot more disc area, but you are getting some. But you're getting a lot more disc span, and you're getting accelerated air over the surfaces, over the fixed surfaces, and also over the movable surfaces, and that makes them livelier. That what really makes an airplane work. So we've noticed that. But also, we don't see any of the spiral airflow or GP or P factor effects or whatever you want to call them that are most airplanes are susceptible to, because the whole prop on one motor is on one side of the wing, and the whole prop on the other one's on the other side of the wing, and it feels just like jet flight. It really does. Now, here's an interesting thing. The airplane has retracts. All four of the ones, the three I have built and the one I'm working on, all four have retracts. And the first time we flew the test bed twin, we left the retracts down. We didn't want to try all the systems at one time. And we flew the airplane and charged the battery, and we put back in 2,400 milliamps in a 4,000 battery. And then we flew it and retracted the landing gear, landed and charged the battery, and we put back in 1,800 milliamps. It was 1/4 less energy used with the landing gear up. And even though the landing gear added a little bit of weight, the airplane felt measurably lighter with the landing gear up because of the lack of drag. So there's a couple of big advantages right there.
Was it your insides that you felt like were just tighter, or what do you mean?
No, it just has less drag. So it was using less energy to go through the flight, and it just felt like it was lighter. And the drag is amazing. Well, if you've ever flown a ringmaster, a good ringmaster with the gear on it, and then take the gear off, you know it flies a whole lot better. Well, the same thing here. If you retract the landing gear, it flies a whole lot better. So with the landing gears that are available now, and there's several different brands that are available, we're using the E-flights, and they've been flawless so far, knock on wood, but but so far it's been good.
You just brought up something that I just realized. Why does this Ringmaster fly so bad? The ones when I used to fly in the 70s, I never had landing gear on them. And then the ones that I've been flying here lately all had landing gear, and I don't think they fly worth a darn. Yeah. No,
they don't. And if you fly, and we proved that to ourselves years and years and years ago. In 1976, I had thought, well, we're going to make retractable landing gear airplane for the Nationals, and I built a wing to accept retracts. And my dad actually built a set of retracts. They were little over-center toggle up and toggle down retracts. He built them, and we were going to use a very interesting system to retract and extend them. He said, let's put a bimetal switch in the muffler. And he says, as soon as you start the engine, the bimetal will make and say gear up. And he says, and we'll prevent that from happening by putting a free flight timer on the airplane, and you pull it out and have your helper let it go. And when that reaches the bottom, it'll make the circuit, the gear will go up, and then as soon as the engine shuts off, the bimetal will go the other way and the gear will come down. And we tested that, and that worked out fine too. But the thing is, I said, well, I've never flown an airplane with retracts before. So we took one of my old Genesis airplanes that had removable landing gear. We pulled the gear out and took it out and hand launched it over a nice soft grass field. And indeed, it flew incredibly well. I mean, it was just amazingly good until the wind came up. And then it just accelerated like a son of a gun. In those days, we were using higher pitch props, and we didn't have any kind of governors on board. So the airplane would accelerate. So we kind of shelved the idea. But now that we have all this disc area and we have governors, the electric motors govern, this is the most one-speed thing I've ever felt in my life. It's so fun to fly because it flies at one speed everywhere it's going.
Yeah. Is this the same retracting system that Billy was doing for his Razorback? Because he told me that we had he was built it for retracts. Is that?
No, he was actually going to use the little Robart mechanical retracts. The retracts we have now weren't available back in '95, I guess it was, when we built that. And Dean Pappas had come up with a really neat system called FRED, Functional Retracts Even Deploy, was the acronym. And it was a deal where after you energize both lines. And he designed a circuit that was so sensitive that it would pick up a ground out of the air. So he put an antenna out the outboard wing, and he picked the ground up that way. And when he flipped the switch, the gear would go up, and then when he flipped another switch, it would turn the juice off, the gear would go down. And that worked to perfection, too. And I can't tell you why Billy didn't use it or why we didn't go ahead with that. I really don't know why. It's just one of those things that got kind of lost, in the cracks,
Yeah.
But now it's so simple. Yeah, it flew very well, but I think it would fly even better with the gear up. But now that we have these electric retracts, and of course Will Hubin's timer, you just plug it in and sequence it and forget about it, and you don't even have to think about them. The gear goes up every time you fly, and hopefully goes down every time you land.
That's it. Hopefully.
Everybody says when they see the airplane fly how cool it is. He said, "Boy, I love it when the gear goes up." I said, "Yeah, well, I love it when the gear comes down."
For sure. So you don't have a big repair to do. That would be,
That's that.
So you don't have a big repair to do. That would be terrible.
Yeah, well, we're thinking. At first, we thought about putting little whisker skids down so that if anything did happen, we would, minimize the damage. But it's turned out that it's pretty reliable, and so far, I mean, I'm just going to risk it. I think, Although now Will is working on a system now that we're allowed to use 2.4 gig radios to both retract and extend gear, and also to as an emergency engine shutoff or motor shutoff. So that if you have a bird strike or a prop strike, you don't rip the airplane to pieces. That'll be a kind of a manual override to the system. So that's going to be out probably this year, and that'll give us a little more peace of mind.
Well, I got to tell you, if it wasn't for guys like you, what was that?
I don't know. Something's
I don't know.
Is that on your end, Chris? It seems to be coming up on your side. Anyway.
You can kill me if you want.
No, I'm going to wait till after the Nats to do that.
Let's see. 8-1. We're going to say.
For everybody out there listening that doesn't know, I told Bob Stewart this the other day that my pick to win this Nationals is Chris. He's really putting a tremendous amount of effort in, and no doubt in my mind he's going to win one sooner or later. But this is my pick to win the Nationals is Chris Rudd. So
we wish him luck. We're going to say goodbye to you, Chris, because I think you got some interference coming in. But we'll keep on with Bob Hunt. So we hope to have you back.
Be good, Chris.
All right, thanks for having me.
Bye now.
Bye.
All right, Bob.
He's a really delightful young man and a hard worker and very helpful to me and Pampa. I know he's been helpful to you. He's just the breath of fresh air for this event, and I'm just so happy he's in it again.
Well, he's got a new project coming up. I'm not going to talk about it, but we did kind of hit it a little bit. He's going to be doing Billy's P-47 in a kit or something. I'm going to build a prototype for him. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exciting. That's a great airplane. I have one of Billy's P-47s here. We converted it to electric, and it really flies great. So.
Have you flown that?
I have not flown it, but Billy has, and he loves it. The only thing is we had some kind of a problem with the timer or the ESC, so I'm putting a whole new system in it, and we're gonna fly it again. But the airplane flew great. I mean, we get up to about the outside loops and had a little glitch in the system. So I think we had a bad timer, and we just didn't have time to switch it out while he was here. And I've just kind of put it on my rack, and I'm gonna take it down and get it flying this year for him.
Well,
although he's not going to use it at the Nats,
I remember you telling me about that, and that situation's called cogging, and I thought I had sent you the map for it, but use that map and it'll go away, because I had that problem too.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to put a whole new updated system in it anyway. So, and that one's fitted with retracts too, so we might just go ahead and put the retracts in and get the whole thing working. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great for a warbird to see the gear go up. That'd be phenomenal.
Oh, how about it? Yeah, that would be great. It really would be.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like that airplane, is because it had, if you remember in '04 when I came out there with the tape measure and you said, "What are you doing there?" And I said, "I'm going to build some of these." And you guys just kind of laughed at me. Like, what's going on? And then within 6 months, I had a couple of them, and a year later, I had 3 of them. But
yeah, nobody can build faster than you can. That's for sure. You know.
Well,
maybe Chris. He's building pretty quick too. Actually, you know.
Well, it's all about desire. When when you got to have something. Like my Continental was built in 39 days, I think, 38 days.
Yeah, it wears me out just to look at the pictures when you put them up, how much work you've done in how short a period of time. I used to think I was a fast builder until I saw you and Chris build, you know, and then, whew.
Well, you know,
really impressive.
I want to interject this to all the listeners out there because it is so fast. It may go rapidly, but I'm not spending any less time than anybody else. There's still 400 hours in that. You know, it's 40 days.
Yeah.
40 days of 10-hour days. So.
Yeah. Any way you cut it, it's 400 hours worth of work to build an airplane. I mean, a really good airplane. Yeah. No, that's the same number everybody comes up with, and I think it's pretty accurate.
You know, anywhere between.
And it's funny, these twins don't seem to take much longer, even though you have another nacelle to build. They seem to go just about as quickly, and you know, I'm going to be building twins from now on. That's all I'm going to be building.
Well, that extra nacelle is basically just like another cowl, isn't it? So how long?
Yeah.
How long could it take to build an extra part? You know, so you just put on that little piece, and then you know, I would imagine the alignment is a little more difficult, but. You know, I don't see much.
Well, that's an interesting thing. I'm glad you brought that up because when we first started building these things, I got the nacelles done. I said, how am I going to mount these to the airplane and get them accurate? How am I going to glue these onto the wing accurately? And then it dawned on me, kind of reverse thinking. My dad always told me, he said, if something doesn't make sense, you know, look at it from a completely opposite point of view. So what I did was, I said, let's put the nacelles mount them to the bench in the right orientation, the little fixtures, and mount the airplane to the nacelles, and then line it up over some datum lines that we put on the baseboard, and that worked to perfection.
Right.
So it's really not any harder now to build a twin and get it aligned than it is to build a single engine airplane. Matter of fact, if anything, it's easier.
Well, I know that you know you're a great builder, and I look at your stuff and it's high quality, and I doubt that you've had time to look at anything that I do. But if you look at my method of alignment, it's different than what you did with what is that guy's name with that, and that was great. You know how you took the stick. I got that video from you on pattern alignment.
Oh, that was a radio. That was a radio control alignment. I don't align my airplanes that way. That's not how I do mine.
I align mine with a on plate. I draw a center line down the glass where the center line of the fuselage is, and then a trailing edge and a leading, trailing edge of the stabilizer, and put them down, and that's it. It's lined up.
Well, yeah, but getting the airplane, the rest of the alignment is important too, and it all starts with getting the wing into the fuselage perfectly, so that the wing center line is parallel to the top of the fuselage side, or to whatever line you want it to be. It has to be put in so accurately. And one of the problems most people have is that on wings that taper in both plan form and thickness, finding the exact shape of the wing where it passes through the fuselage side has always been an issue. Either they're shimming or sanding to get the wing to fit in. And we found a way to get our wings to fit within 0.005 of an inch every time, so there's no sanding or shimming required. What we do is if we're making a foam wing airplane, we make it an extra panel, and we cover it with the same thickness sheeting that we're going to use on the actual wing, and sand it about the same amount. And then we measure out from the center to where the fuselage side will pass over the wing, make a mark, and we cut it in a bandsaw in the cradle. So we have a plug gauge with which to open the fuse side so that the wing, when we do drop the wing in, it'll fit perfectly. And I mean absolutely perfectly. And then once you get that alignment correct, then you can block the whole thing up on a table with an angle finder and get it dead level, and then put the tail in accurately too.
Right. Right.
So there are different ways of doing it, but we found that way to be. All the airplanes that have been built that way have flown right off the bench.
You know, there's different ways to skin a cat, but they're all basically the same way, because that's, I end up with a perfect hole, because if you don't have that wing in there perfectly, the plane will fly screwball. There's no way around it. Well,
it may or may not. Your chances of, you're not guaranteed that it's going to fly right off the board. But if you have a way of accurately measuring the wing center line to the top of the fuse side, and then you can block it all up and put the tail in with 0 incidents or a quarter of degree positive, some people like, whatever it is, but no negative, you're pretty well assured that the airplane is going to turn equally and fly well. You know, I don't know how much more time we have. There's one thing I'd like to bring up since we're on the subject.
Go ahead.
How much?
We got about
how much time?
15 more minutes. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, back in the 2000s, early 2000s, Billy Werwage and I made 10 trips together to VSC in my infamous red stunt van, my Astro van. I'd pick them up in Cleveland. I'd leave here on a Thursday night and pick them up on Friday morning at about 3 in the morning, and we'd be in Tucson on Saturday afternoon to watch the combat match that used to be there. But anyway, we had all this time to traveling to talk, but we're also both big music buffs, and we spent a lot of the time working out harmonies to Jackson Browne songs and things because we're both big fans. But the other half of the time we spent talking about airplanes, and that was really very productive. And over those 10 trips, we've kind of coalesced a little some rules about model airplane building. And we boiled it down to, because people always call me and they ask me what kind of airplanes should they build, what design. I say, well, you should build the design you like, because really it's not. I don't believe it's the design of the airplane that's real important. It's the execution of the building of the airplane that's important, and the setting it up. Most of these airplanes are within a few percentage points of each other anyway. So you pick one you like and you build it. But we came up with what we thought were the 5 attributes that every real stunt ship has to have. And in no particular order, because if you leave one out, the others don't matter anyway, they are, it has to be light. Now, I don't mean necessarily feather light, but it has to be within a certain ounce per square foot range in order to not stall, generally between 11 to 12 ounces per square foot of wing area. It has to be light. It has to be accurate, dead accurate. And then it has to be rigid, and the accuracy and the rigidity go hand in glove, because if an airplane is accurate on the workbench but not accurate under load, it's not accurate. So it has to be accurate and rigid. And then the fourth one is power plant, and I don't care if it's glow or electric, steam, nuclear, or 2 chipmunks on a turntable spinning the prop. The important thing is that it's powerful enough to do the job. It's reliable, it's repeatable, it's tunable and understandable by the owner and the operator. And then the 5th thing is a robust and fully adjustable control system where you can adjust the ratio of elevator flap movement and also the centering of the elevators and flaps by moving the pushrod in or out. So if all 5 of those attributes are present, then you'll be able to trim the airplane and use Paul Walker's outstanding trim articles to trim the airplane perfectly.
Right. Yeah, Paul.
Well, it's a bit long-winded, but
Well, that's all right. Paul does have some good trimming issues. Some good things going on with his trim stuff.
It's the Bible for trimming. It really is. We're so fortunate to have him do that for us, or have him in the process of doing it. I've learned so much from that series.
With this new system, I can get up to 25 people on at a time. And I'm still working on, tuning this out. This is all new to me. But I'd like to get Paul Walker and maybe Kaz Minato, because we're talking over the computer now. It's voice over IP. I could call in Japan. Or maybe we could get Igor on there. I'm not sure we could understand it. But at least, we can open up the world to this medium, because as long as we can understand each other. I speak Spanish, but I don't speak Slovak.
Yeah. Well, but fortunately, Igor speaks Stunt, and he speaks it fluently. I know that both Gene Pop is, who I regard highly as a highly intelligent man and knowledgeable, and also Paul Walker and all those other guys that are like Brett Buck and all the real thinkers in this event, all regard Igor very highly. And he can teach us a lot too. So yes, this medium you have here is going to prove to be invaluable over time, I believe, to find out what people are doing that works.
Right.
And that's a great thing. You're to be commended.
It's a little hard to get going because this is a new thing, and people don't understand quite exactly what's going on. But hey, it's open to the world. Anybody that wants to get in the world could listen to it live, or if you want, I can call you
Yeah.
in the world for free. So don't be ashamed to, we'll figure it out how to get on there if you live in Australia or wherever. We'll figure it out how to get you on here. Well,
I think it's wonderful.
I thank you for coming back for your second time. I want to have you back again because it's kind of going to be an ongoing series until we get it up and going. I'd like to get Brett Buck on and maybe Ted Fancher and all the top guys in the country to let us know what's going on in their world and in their mind and in their stunt community.
Well, and also, some of the people maybe don't have the same notoriety, perhaps, but there's a lot of people out there who are, I find a tremendous amount of people who are pretty well unknowns as far as, stunt flyers, but they're also very intelligent people and have great ideas. I mean, there's some really, really great people out there, so it would be a good forum for people, whether they're known or not, if they have a good idea, to come on and share it. Because everybody has a different way of doing this, and there's so many different ways of doing this stunt thing. It behooves us all to listen to everyone and pick and choose the things that work for us,
Right. I mean, I'm open to any suggestions. I'll try it, and if it doesn't work, I won't do it again. But if it works, hey, why not use it? It doesn't have to be my idea. Just kind of.
I'll tell you, there's this guy local to me here. His name is Frank Embriaco, and Frank is one of the most meticulous builders I've ever met in my life. He just builds exquisite airplanes. Not the world's greatest flyer, but he's trying. He's coming along. But I got to tell you, he's a thinker, and he comes up with staggering ideas, some really neat ideas, which, maybe in another thing we can have Frank on to talk a little bit about some of his ideas. Great finishing and building ideas, and different ways of doing things that we've all done for years. But again, it's not just the top guys you want to talk to. It's everyone out there that has a good idea.
Right. We got one guy in our club. Well, we had one guy. Maybe Bob Arata's got it. I'm not sure. But Gus Vogel, he was an old barnstormer type guy, and he died here recently. But maybe it was Bob Arata. They do something with soap on glass and make decals with soap on glass and dough. I've never seen that before, and I thought, wow, that's really a cool idea. So, I mean, I showed how to do gold leaf lettering, and that method was kind of, I faked it, and I kind of caught that somewhat from Wendy. However, I had done gold leaf lettering in the past in the sign painting, but this is entirely different. So.
I think you maybe should ask for people to send in the ideas that they have, and then if you take one at a time and let them come on and explain their idea and have them send some pictures in and show what they're doing. I think that would be great. One of the things we're doing in Stunt is this next issue is we're starting to present. It's a two-part article on Wesley Dick's Velvet 3 airplane, which has those bidirectional blown flaps, which are really interesting. I mean, I've never flown the airplane, but he seems very enthusiastic about it, and at least it's something different, you could do the same thing with this venue. You could get people to explain new things. I'm sure Igor and Paul Walker and Brett Buck and all these guys could explain amazing things, but I'm sure there are other people out there who are maybe not as well known but have just as good an idea. So. And that's one of the things I think we got to remember too. And this, I'd like to close with this: is that there's so few of us in the entire universe that are doing this. They're flying stunt and building stunt airplanes. That it kind of behooves us all to get along and work with each other. And sometimes there's we have rows between us or something. It really behooves us all to get along and help each other out and move this event further forward, get more new people into it. And I think this thing you're doing will help do that.
Well, I'm glad that was a wrap-up because it looks like we are out of time. And if you got any pictures, send them to me. But I would like to say thank you for being here, and we hope to have you back.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right, Bob.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.